Okay, we are now live. Welcome to the About the Labor Show. I'm your host, Sean Borman, Vikings Territory. With me today is Joe Johnson, owner of Vikings Territory, Purple PTSD. We also have Joe
Heyo.
Oberly, what's up, Joe? We also have Joe Oberly, who's a writer for Purple PTSD, as well as other publications as well. He's trying to connect in the
Sportspost.com.
meantime. Is it? And then Mike, who's a newbie. So welcome, Mike. Mike,
Welcome,
you
dude.
mind giving us a little just a little background on yourself, where you're from, how you got into this, what have you?
Yeah, gladly. Born and raised Minnesota, from Detroit Lakes, hometown of Adam Thielen.
Right on.
I've been a
Hey.
diehard Vikings fan my entire life. I don't know. I had major problems after the 2009 game, and I was only 13 years old, and that's when I realized that, this is going to be my entire life, isn't it? And I'm still here. I'm still excited about the team. Today was giving me heartaches again, too, but we're still alive. We still got – I still think we got a lot of season left to play here, so I'm looking forward to it.
Is
Yeah,
is Thielen
agree.
like a god in Detroit Lakes?
Yeah, pretty much. He's just a great story from anywhere you're from. I know a lot of people believe, I think it was that Gatorade commercial where it says we're all just a kid from somewhere, but for a lot of people who dream of going to the NFL like I did when I was a kid, it's just fun to see it happen, and especially to have a kid from your own hometown. It just kind of makes you realize, go after your dreams. Why not? So,
And that's kind of why we're all here, I think. You joined Purple PTSD this week. Sean's been holding it down for Vikings Territory. I see Mr. Joe Oberly made it too. What is up, man?
Hey, what's up, Joe?
Hey, you can hear me? You can see me?
Yeah.
I'm
You hear me? You
alive.
see me?
Good. I was wondering because if a person's not alive in social media, then they're not alive, right?
That seems to be the case. Joe, really quickly, is the editor for Purple PTSD and Vikings Territory. He writes for the Sports Post as well. Sean said, I own the site somehow, and me and Joe do the Morning Joe's podcast together on Tuesday and Friday morning. So definitely check that out. But yeah, I'm happy to be here.
Well, let's hop right into it. Mike, I understand your frustrations because the beginning of the game, it sucked. What was happening there? Joe Johnson, we'll start with you.
Yeah.
We've seen this before, a lot of slow starts. Well, quite a few under DiFilippo. Is there any cause for concern, would you say, or is it kind of changing?
I want to say yes because I'm always super negative. That's like my brain. And I was talking to another new writer after the show, and it's something where you think those slow starts will hurt them against the Bears or will hurt them in the playoffs. The caveat or the silver lining to me was something that me and Joe, Morning Joe's talked about this week that we've been joking around about in the live chat too, is the calm from Stefanski. There was a tangible difference between that slow start and the Vikings continuing with their game plan, which was running the ball, and not deviating from that because it wasn't working, and then putting it all on Kirk Cousins to throw 60 times between the end of the second half and the second quarter. That much volume just turns into turnovers in the NFL, despite his accuracy. They keep talking about how he stacks up against Drew Brees this season and in regards to his career. So sticking with the game plan, I think, was great. They did get bailed out by some amazing plays late in the second half. That Hail Mary was a top 10 Vikings moment for me. So I was pleased to see that they didn't panic. But, yeah, it would be nice to see them start out with maybe not going 3 and out 50 times. You got to worry about that against better teams.
Absolutely.
I think the thing what's all about Viking fans is we're the only ones that panic. The players generally don't panic until the last.
The live chat was full of people talking about who's getting fired in the first half. There is so much panic.
They all, it was funny. I was sorry for interrupting, Sean, but I was watching the game with my son today from Chicago, and he said, I was getting pretty frustrated with the way the game started, and saying this is total opposite of what we saw last week. And he says, nothing happens till the second half anyway. And I'm thinking, yeah, well, that's kind of a true. Things ratchet up, but if you get down, and they're down 3 scores, thankfully they're only field goals, but you get down in this league 2 months in the first half, you can't always come climbing back. You make adjustments, then if things aren't working out when you come out of halftime and you haven't been able to change the momentum or change the way things going, then maybe panic sets in a little bit. Then
Yeah, and I'll be completely honest.
Yeah,
I was started to panic there until that touchdown to Diggs there. I guess the Hail Rudy, as Cousins calls it, or the Hail Mary, was just kind of icing on the cake for the first half. But Mike, do you have any quick thoughts?
I just like. Oh, sorry, I forgot. I don't like to see the slow start, and I don't think it's going to help us in our postseason hopes here because it doesn't follow the Vikings' win condition. Underneath Zimmer's reign here, we've played a stellar defense, and we tried to run the ball. If you get behind, you don't have the option of running the ball, and your defense can't hold teams to field goals for 60 minutes if they're not getting any help from their offense. So if the Vikings want to win against high-caliber teams, high-caliber defenses and offenses, they're going to have to score early, or otherwise they're not going to be winning games. So that's I would like to see at least a touchdown next week in the first 2 to 3 drives, because I think the Bears can – we've seen them absolutely turn the table on good teams this year, and I wouldn't be surprised to see it at home next week if they don't get off to a good start. So.
Yeah, Joe brought this up and you guys alluded to it. There's this weird dichotomy between the defense bailing out the offense, holding Detroit to those 3 field goals. A couple early in the game, they pushed them out of field goal range with some negative plays for the Lions. But then you offset that with some of the penalties that they were getting in third long situations or second long situations. The play of the first half, outside of the Diggs touchdown and the Hail Mary, was the flag on that field goal that ended up being a false start instead of offsides. If that would have gone the other way, they would have had a new set of downs. That could have been a touchdown. Completely changes the how the game plan works. So it was really relieving that the defense was playing at a high level like they had been the last few games, and holding them to those field goals, because it could have been like the Bills game where they couldn't overcome early struggles. But we can't expect that every week, like you guys said. We can't expect them to hold them to field goals or to compensate for all those penalties. With at least 10 penalties on the day, which is very not Zimmer specific, and is something that is really hard to usually overcome.
You wonder if that's a little bit of lack of focus or discipline right out of the gate. I mean, they had the big win last week, and they were all flying high. I've harped on this a million times, Joe, is that guys are human and they get up and they get down. I mean, we saw a team last week in Miami that had the big emotional win and then just came out as flat as a pancake. And so this week, with everything to get to accomplish this week, it was really disappointing to see them come out and just struggle. Now, one of those, the first one's on field position. You can't fault them for that first 3 and out, but the next 3 you can. That's and I'm not sure what's happening. I think Detroit was fired up, and they were going to see if they had a chance to win. And the last thing you want to do is give a team like that hope that they can upset you on that day. And as you saw, as soon as they got deflated by the Hail Rudy, they were done. They just kind of packed it. So.
How much of that do you guys think is maybe implementing more Stefanski's game plan, like just having all those 3 and outs? Maybe they were doing new things. I know that obviously this late in the season they were saying, well, they're not going to implement a new playbook with Stefanski. Maybe they'll just simplify things and let the playmakers make plays, so on and so forth. Do you think that was part of it, or do you think it's more of like an emotional or execution thing, Mr. Borman?
Didn't quite catch that, Joe. Can you remember repeating that?
No, yeah, I was just wondering if maybe some of the early struggles in offense were based on scheme with Stefanski, as opposed to execution or just emotional getting up for the game type stuff?
I was wondering that exact same thing. Personally, I don't know. It looked like to me the offensive line was just getting manhandled right off the bat. They didn't bring any energy from what I saw. They're getting pushed back on every play. And Andrew Kramer, actually, with the Star Tribune, I thought brought up a good point that the Lions defensively showed a lot of the same formations that the Patriots did that the Vikings offense really struggled with when we were at New England. So I think the Vikings kind of struggled with that right off the bat, but we're kind of able to adjust, especially later in the second half and after halftime. So, Mike, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I do. I was going to say on the second possession where we went 3 and out on, Diggs dropped a catch that went right through the breadbasket or right through his hands. That should have been a 12-yard pickup on 2nd and 10. So you can't put that on Stefanski. He called a perfect play for the situation. He beat his coverage. He just dropped the ball. So, I mean, I think some people are going to be a little concerned, or I don't know if they call it bored, but like they want to see big plays happening. But I think the conservative play calls were the right thing. I mean, we had to get the ground game going. We had to try and get moving the ball safely. And, I mean, just a simple drop, and we go 3 and out. So,
and I wonder – the conservative play calling, I wonder how much of that is them attempting to limit the devastating turnovers that Cousins has had. We talked about that. Me and Joe have talked about that a lot. We're best friends, at least on my end. And I feel like in the last few weeks they've taken away some of those deeper shots just because Cousins isn't seeing. I remember specifically the Bears game, like the squatting safety that he didn't see. Maybe they just would rather plug and let the defense dictate things and just limit those mistakes. Because with all those mistakes, to be honest, this team would be up there, fighting for, a top seed, especially with the tiebreakers against some of these better teams that they arguably should have beaten, like the Saints, the Bears the first time, the Rams perhaps. So I wonder how much of that is part of it. And that kind of sucks when you have a quarterback you pay that much money that you have to maybe go back to more of a Case Keenum play calling system where you're like, just don't blow it and we'll win. I don't know how that's going to work in the playoffs, but it seems to be working these past few weeks.
You saw a much better defense though than you did last week. I mean, I was at the stadium last week, and I was amazed at the size of the holes that Cook had to run through. And in the first half, there was nothing. It wasn't until they got down a little bit, and the second half opened up. I mean, that first series of the second half was pretty telling. I mean, either their will was gone or what. But then, Cook started finding some room. I don't know if they got tired or what, but it was completely
They realized they
different.
played for the Lions.
That could be.
So, not to interrupt here, but I just had a quick question for Joe O. Because, Joe, it sounds like you've been following the team for a long time. You went to a lot of games back at the Met. Were you like myself and other fans? Were you just like super emotionally connected to this team and kind of quick to pull the trigger on your emotions when you were younger? And now that you're older, it's a little less reactionary. I guess that would be my question.
Yes, to say it succinctly, yes. It's funny to listen to and spend so much time with my little buddy Joe Johnson because I see a little bit of him in that. I would, I was amazed at myself in my young adulthood life. I mean, I grew up watching him and totally into it as a kid, and like anybody is. But as you get a little older, you get a little more realistic. But if the Vikings lost on Sunday, I was bummed until Wednesday, and then it started to subside. Because then you're starting to look towards the next game. And I really wondered about myself a little bit as I grew older and got the perspective of a significant other who said, "What's wrong with you?" so yeah, basically that's true. And I still have the emotional attachment. I don't get like that. I'm the highs and lows are much lower. I want them to win like nobody's business. But when you cover them and I have spent a few years covering them professionally, where you're supposed to be a little more detached, and it has had an effect on me and how I react to them. yeah, truth be told, deep down, there's purple blood in my veins, and it's never going to go away. But it's a little different than it used to be for sure.
My dad always
for
tells
sure.
me it's going to get better as you get older, and I feel like it's getting worse for some reason. Like it's just like it's all building up. Like I have so much more data to be disappointed about. But yeah, that's it's such a good dichotomy with me and Joe on our show. Not to keep plugging it, but I am week to week all over the place in regards to my emotions. And before I started writing for the team, I wouldn't even watch TV till Wednesday, let alone cover the team. So I'm getting there. Is the point? And it's fun to document it, so I can look back at it.
The Vikings are never out of a game with this defense. Almost never.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I mean, look at all the losses that they've had this year. You know, granted, when they were playing games early in the year and the defense was struggling, it might have been a little different. But since they figured it out, they're always in a game. So if you're down 21-0 like the Dolphins were last week, it's a little more concerning. And then, you know, or like the game last year in Philadelphia, that one was over quick, but it's rarely with this defense should you ever check out and say these guys are done. You know,
and they showed that stat during the game too that said like the 5 top teams since the 80s or the 70s in regards to playoff games, the Vikings were 3rd. So just in general, they always seem to every 5 to 7 years make a run, which is exciting for us since we cover the team.
They get a great
whether or not they do that this year is a good question.
Well, I think that's the reason that we're even excited about this season still now. I mean, from a record standpoint, it seems like it's been terrible, but we know that we're never out of a game with this defense, and that's why even though we're sitting at 8-6-1 right now, we still believe that the Vikings can win the Super Bowl this year. Which pretty much every other pundit has written us off, but with this defense, we can win any game if our offense shows up. So, I'm so excited.
We'll know so much more about it next weekend. You know, I told Joe early in the week. They said I want them. You know, they got the Dolphins win. I want to see another convincing win on Sunday, and that carries them into the Bears game at home with everything on the line. And if they don't win that one, they shouldn't be in the playoffs. They don't deserve it. They aren't going to go anywhere if they do. So if you carry this natural progression and they are ascending with that defense, if they beat the Bears next week, there's got to be teams in the NFC that are not going to want to play them. That's all there is to it, I think.
This is a good time to ask this question. So I've heard this from a lot of our writers. My dad said the same thing. We were all rooting for the Texans afternoon, and that game was amazing. I've heard from people saying, "Well, we want the Eagles to win because we want to earn the playoffs, or we want the Bears game to be a playoff game." Me personally, maybe I'm biased because of just the way that our contracts are structured with sponsors. I want to make the playoffs because we're all going to make more money, but I would rather just be in the playoffs in general and have the Bears game be what it is. Obviously, but I've just heard so many people saying, yeah, well, let's make that game count and earn. And I don't know, Joe, if you meant that literally or just in terms of if they can't beat the Bears, they're not going to make a run in the playoffs anyway, so there's no point to it, which I understand a lot there completely.
Did I hear you just say that I make more money if the Vikings get in the playoffs? Now I'm pissed. I'm not going to be able to till Wednesday. What the heck?
I might have to buy a new Vikings hoodie since I've been rocking this in every Periscope video. But outside of that, I'll share the wealth. What do you think, Sean? What's your view on the? I hate Foles. I hate the magic that everyone's talking about. It just bothers me. It's for obvious reasons.
Oh, I mean, don't even get me started on the Eagles. Packers are obviously my number one least favorite team. But the Eagles have become very close in ranking. I mean, it's hard for me to really just over the Saints. Yeah, for me personally, and for me, it's hard to really describe how I feel about that without cursing constantly. So I don't like the Eagles at all.
At least they have a classy fan base. Ugh.
Oh yeah, see that's kind of where it stems from. I figured. I hate Eagles. But I wanted to kind of touch on the defense a little bit here. What is up with Xavier Rhodes, do you guys think? I know Zimmer has kind of said he's always hurt, and it sure seems like he's always hurt. Do you guys think, there's anything to be concerned about there, or is just
No, well, see,
is it like
I said
Zimmer
this in
says?
the
Is it?
yeah, because you feel like when you see him go down, let's say just no context, and you see one of your key guys go down like that, you're concerned. I mean, it looks horrible, but then you add context to it and say, okay, that's the third time he seemingly had a career-ending injury this season, and then he's fine the next week. So I don't know if he is super tough and he overcomes like things like his ankle injury earlier in the season looked horrible. Like I understand that was real, right? But I don't know if he overreacts to certain injuries, or like some people in the live chat said, maybe when he gets beat, he does that just to give it like an excuse to people, which I can't imagine he would do. But I fully expect him to play next week. It does. I can see the argument.
I got two comments on that. One is, it's a groin. At least that's what they said on the air, and that's something that can heal, get better, get worse real quickly in the game. So I get that. And he's also had the ankle on. So the other thing is, Zimmer alluded to it at one of the press conferences. He's got a nickname for him, and I'm thinking it's Drama Queen, but I don't know. He's not said anybody because he does look like when he goes down, it's over. It's over, and he gets up, and by Wednesday he's limited, and by Sunday he's playing. So I got no problems with it if he shows up on Sunday. I don't care.
I don't even necessarily really want to get started on my opinions on Xavier Rhodes, because I've had hours worth of conversations with my friends about how I think he's going to get replaced by the three quarterback or corners that we have drafted in the recent years within the next 2 or 3 years. Obviously, that's why we drafted him, because they have great talent. But I said it in the live chat. The only thing that ever gets hurt on Xavier is his pride. Every single time he goes down with an injury, it's on a play where the receiver broke away from him at basically the line of scrimmage. And I don't know. For me, I guess I don't know if it's just because he's slowing down or if these injuries actually are affecting his speed. What I'm curious about is how, if he keeps getting burned, I don't know, it's been like roughly once a week, or that's just what it seems like, because he seems to be going down once a week. Why Zimmer hasn't put him in press? I got to look up the physical stats of Xavier. I don't have him in front of me, but he's like, what is he, 6'3", 230 pounds? He's this huge corner. Why isn't he dominating these slot and bigger receivers at the line like that? He needs to be using his size to disrupt their routes so he doesn't get burned, because he's clearly not fast enough to keep up with them. So
I thought that was the plan too. Like with just really quickly with Trey Waynes being like 6'1" or 6'2", also, they have these big guys. Going against it was obviously everyone was saying for Aaron Rodgers being in the division or whatever. Not Trey Waynes isn't a very physical guy. He's super skinny, obviously, but he's tall and long.
Fast.
I kind of thought maybe they do some more of that, but I don't know enough about like the scheme to say anything else, to be honest.
I think he's hurt, and we don't, I don't know about how tough he is, but I think he's injured, and he's got injuries that haven't had a chance to heal, because he does show up and play every week. And if you keep tweaking your groin, that's going to slow you down a little bit. I think he's been hurt a lot of this season. So if Mike, and I don't know this, I liked your comment about it hurting his pride and that whole thing. But if we're taking only this season on which to judge him, I think that's, and I'm not saying you are. If we are, I think that's too much of a small sample size. I think he's put it on tape before this, and he's still a good player. And if he's back to 100%, I don't think he gets beat out by these other guys. I think that Zimmer certainly likes what he brings to the defense.
I wonder how much.
I didn't want to imply that he wasn't a good player. I mean, he's starting on the Minnesota Vikings defense. I mean, he is a good player. I just remember, what was it? Was it 2 seasons ago when they were comparing him with the greatest corners of all time? And since then, I mean, he's had these nagging injuries that have obviously, I mean, I'm not going to say they have definitely affected him, but I still am skeptical of, in these huge games where we need to win. I mean, I think back to the Saints game last year where he gave up a few the playoff game when we luckily ended up winning. His emotions ended up having huge implications on the game, and I mean, Drew Brees was picking him apart for half of the second half of the game. Yeah, I can get real heated about this topic, and I wasn't expecting to get my voice this early on like this, but it's just my opinion.
That's why you're here.
You look at Holton Hill too. Holton Hill's a big guy. He's playing well. I was going to ask, I wonder how much the fact that they're corners that Zimmer, Rhodes predates Zimmer, but that Zimmer has invested this time into. Like Joe and I have had this argument or debate. And I want to throw this to you guys. You have the three players in Trey's going to need an extension next season. You have Barr's contract looming, and then you have Sheldon Richardson on a 1-year deal. Of those three people, if you can keep two, who would they be? I lean towards Richardson because I think he's a huge disruptor. I know there's a ton of depth on the defensive line, but I think he's an all-pro level guy. And then Trey, because of just the fact that Zimmer selected him and also just invested so much time into getting him where he's at. And I also don't think he'll be that super expensive. He would be the number one corner on the free agency market, obviously. But I just haven't been a big Barr guy. I personally don't understand why he makes the Pro Bowl every year. I don't think there's been games this year where he's been picked on. The Rams game sticks out as a huge red flag to me. He's played better. They've been rushing him more. He's been getting in the backfield more, which is nice. But I wonder, just off the Rhodes thing, how much, with all that equity and Zimmer being a corner guy, if he would have the ability to even let those guys go from just his obsession standpoint. And I think that'll kind of determine what happens with the other two guys as well. I don't know, Sean, if I'm crazy. And everyone says Barr and one other. Everyone that I talk to says we're keeping Barr.
Yeah, you talking like Barr, Richardson, that type of discussion?
Barr, Richardson, Trey Waynes, if you had to keep two. And I will say, I think Eric Wilson is proving that, granted he played in Kendricks' position tonight, but the defense didn't lose a step with him there, and he's played well when Barr's needed spells as well.
See, I was a Barr hater for a long time. I did not like Barr. I thought he should have a lot more sacks. I never understood why he didn't rush the quarterback more. But I'm really starting to appreciate what he does for this defense as of late. He's really kind of the quarterback of the defense. He started Mike Zimmer's rookie year, as head coach. He's his first draft pick. He's smart, like Zimmer says, and he does a lot more, I think, than the casual fan sees. So as far as keeping him, I don't know if he's really worth, $15 million a year. But is he worth what he's getting paid now, about $12 million? I would argue yes, because of those reasons. And but if you're looking at trying to keep, if you have to keep one of Barr, Richardson, Waynes. See, Waynes is under contract next year. I'm not sure if folks realize that. But I would still lean towards Barr. I know Richardson has come in and played well, but I do think as a soon to be 29-year-old defensive tackle, I think you can replace that production, 4.5 sacks in the draft, whereas Barr is going to be a lot more difficult to replace.
My Apple Watch told me to take a deep breath, so I must have gotten worked up over Anthony Barr.
Yeah, you don't like that. You don't like that answer?
No, it was during my rant.
I'm a Barr guy. I too have, I've been up and down on him, a little hot and cold. I think we're all have in our minds what we saw his rookie year, and then he got hurt, and then things kind of went off, and then he's come back a little bit, and then he's not making those splash plays. But, when you hear the way Zimmer talks about him, to be perfectly honest, I'm confused why they haven't done something with him already, because he is going to be not only is he going to be difficult to replace, he's going to be difficult to sign if he gets, to the free agent market, because a guy like that, his size, his cover ability, his ability to rush a quarterback, and some of the other things. And, Zimmer has always said he's such a smart player. And like you said, Sean, he's the captain of the defense and puts everybody where they're supposed to be. So I think it'll be difficult to replace, and I think it starts with him. I mean, they do have a lot more depth at corner now. I mean, to be honest, sure you want Wayne's there, but I think he's somebody that
I'll add the caveat to that. My underlying motivation or my thought is and Joe, I'm really glad you brought that up. Is we looked at like Brzezinski and his magic with figuring out these contracts and making everything fit, and then you look at why isn't Barr been signed yet, and you have to wonder if he is looking for more money than they're willing to give him. And obviously, they've been working on it. So the reason that the fact that it hasn't, when you look at what they did with Linval, with everybody on that defense, that core of that defense, they signed them early and gave them deals through 2021, 2022. So you have to think that maybe he's just asking for more money than they're willing to give, and the Vikings are willing to say, okay, prove it the rest of the year. And so I'm thinking also that Trey probably won't cost as much. Richardson probably won't cost as much. His productions, he started out amazingly this year on inhuman levels of pressure those first couple games. But I'm just wondering if Barr is willing to say, all right, well, if I do go to free agency, I'm gonna get a ton of money, so why would I stick around? Especially when you have a coach like Zimmer, who has a couple seasons ago was kind of trashing him in the media, questioning his drive when he was banged up like Xavier Rhodes has been this year. So maybe he holds that grudge deep down. I don't know. That's part of my rationale. I should probably put that out there. And now my heart isn't beating super fast, so that's a good thing too.
And then,
Mike, what do you think about that?
From the Big Ten, so you got to put that out there too.
Another
thing to think about is didn't they just come out after we got off the air the other day, Joe? They said that they raised the salary cap for next year by $20 million. Is that right?
That's what I've heard. I was expecting
that helps.
10. Because I was rationalizing the Cousins contract and saying, well, on average it goes up $10 million. So in 3 years, he's that $30 million a year is kind of built in. It's not going to eat as much space as people think. But yeah, if it's $20 million, that's amazing. I'm happy with that.
Go ahead, Mike. I kind of jumped on you.
No worries about it. Honestly, I don't have a ton more to add. Both Sean and Joe O kind of encapsulated my entire thoughts about it. I don't think us as armchair coaches, I mean, even us who do pay a little bit more attention, realize the effect that Barr has on this defense. Zimmer, as everyone knows, is like the master of the A-gap blitz, and he has all of these pre-snap schemes. And Barr is, along with Harrison Smith, those are like the two brain children of Zimmer's defense. And I think it would be hard if you're going to look at the draft or look at free agency to bring in somebody who gets it that quickly. And obviously the one thing is he's going to be hard to bring back because he's going to demand a lot of money because he just got what is his third Pro Bowl or fourth? Whatever it is. Yeah, he's going to be demanding. A lot of hype, and people are going to be excited that he's hitting the free agency market. But I just don't think you're going to be able to fill his shoes. And so
I told Sean off air that I've been in like a month-long argument with people on Reddit, and I'm clearly in the minority here. And so I hate being wrong, but I'm also kind of a prick. I just want to wonder. I wonder. Earlier in the season, the Vikings tried to bring in Kendrick's brother. Who obviously is going to prison now, but at the time he wasn't. I wondered if that they were looking to replace Barr with him, and I he's obviously played great these last couple weeks, but I thought that was kind of a telltale sign too. Personally, I don't know. Anyway, there's other things to talk about. I'm clearly wrong, but I'll never admit it.
On that thought, Joe. I was kind of going to steer us back towards the game that just happened. We touched a little bit on the right. We touched a little bit on the Hail Mary, but I wanted to get your guys' thoughts on Kirk Cousins, who now has 4,116 yards, fifth most all time in Vikings history. Is that number, I guess, kind of overrated, or? What are your guys' kind of overall thoughts on Kirk Cousins?
The volume number, certainly. Wouldn't you say it's a volume number because he had to throw so many passes for the first half of the season? So he's throwing a lot of passes. And
I did look into that, Joe. I just wanted to say quick that he's, I think, right around 8th in attempts all time in Vikings history.
really, wow,
Single season, yeah.
Wow. Yeah.
I got to dial back on what I was writing about him after the game. No, he also set another a record, for the most completions in a season, with one game to go, a Vikings record anyway, and they called him second to Drew Brees in accuracy in quarterbacks in the league right now, I believe, which
as a
nice.
career and in this season. So
Right, and so I thought he had a great game today. You look at his numbers. I mean, you throw on the Diggs drop that Mike talked about, and there was a couple other plays. He didn't have a lot of bad passes. He ended up with 138 something for a quarterback rating, which is pretty darn high, and no interceptions and 3 touchdowns. I thought he had a good game. Once again, it wasn't against a great defense, but it won against one that we saw better than the one of last week. So. He's hot and cold. He looks a heck of a lot more comfortable with Stefanski, Mr. Calm. They should be. They probably have some kind of incense going in the quarterback room before they play. This whole thing with, I said this in the chat. I must have heard 6 different people down at TCO describe him as calm. It was a Vikings talking point. Okay, we're going to say Kevin's calm, as opposed to the chaos that was here with B. Filippo, which I never knew was existed. But anyway, it's obviously helped Cousins, because he didn't look like the quarterback with happy feet that we saw a couple weeks ago. The last 2 weeks, he looked settled in the pocket, decisive, and so if that's the case, more power to it. He just missed Aldrick Robinson, which would have been a great touchdown.
Yeah.
And he found Kyle Rudolph. He rediscovered Rudolph, which was so wonderful to see. I mean, that's another great weapon to load up and just show somebody that you might be playing in the playoffs. The Vikings can do this as well. They can run the ball.
Yeah.
They can throw to their 2 guys you've been seeing all season. But now we got a tight end that's going to catch the ball too, so you're going to have to worry about him. So, Cousins has been up and down. Some of it's offensive line, some of it's him. Under pressure, how he reacts. But I'm fine with him going forward. I'm fine. I am excited if they can get there to see what he does in the playoffs. I'm really excited.
Been doing some Periscope stuff, reactions, halftime reactions, pregame stuff, postgame stuff. And I said the exact same thing Joe said about Kyle Rudolph. I think that's a Stefanski thing. I think the fact that we haven't seen Laquan Treadwell since Stefanski took over is a scheme thing. They realize he's too much of a risk, and why are we throwing to him on these third downs when we have a high level tight end who just came off his longest touchdown stretch without touchdowns in his career. Cousins, I am so torn on this guy just because his stats look great. Even his interception numbers are good. 10 interceptions this far in the season. I'm happy with that. It's the when and the kind of the how of those interceptions, the 3 pick sixes, the fumbles. I mean, you could put 3 games on him. The Bills, the Saints, and the Bears are all games that he had catastrophic mistakes. And I argued with Luke Braun on the Purple Journal podcast this preseason. Sean, you'll remember this because we talked about this. About Cousins' stats, and Luke said touchdowns don't matter, and I said what? And I get what he means in that there's been games where, even the Bills game is an example. The game's over, but of course at the end the team goes into prevent, and Cousins gets some touchdowns and some yardage to make his stat line look better. I think his stats don't reflect the output or the wins and losses, and I think that was the knock against him in Washington. But they, like I said, they shored things up, whether that's taking away some of his gunslinger stuff down the field. I'm okay with it. But I'm always I've said in the live chat 10 times today, don't turn the ball over. It's like the new Blair Walsh thing for me. I used to have to go walk around the block when he kicked the field goal. Now, when Cousins is deep in Vikings territory, I'm terrified. And that's not what you want when you pay this much money, but I'm taking what we have and trying to be more Olberly-esque in my life and in covering the team. I want leather-bound books in my background in the future, like Joe has. It's like he's in a commercial for a law office, and I mean that in a good way. I'm comfortable with where we're at with Cousins, I'll say.
Okay, I got to get Mike's thoughts. Yep, go ahead, Mike.
I'll hop in here quick. My opinion, I guess, is that he's getting barn burner money at $84 million guaranteed when I think he is a far better system quarterback. When you can get design motion for Kirk Cousins, the guy's almost unstoppable. But the way he was being asked to play earlier this year, throwing the ball 60 yards a game, led to us. I mean, a lot of people believing that it was a complete bust, and I still believe he's the quarterback. He's going to be here for 3 years, unless barring a complete idiotic failure of upper management of this team. But
they have to pay him regardless, so they can't.
Well, yeah, so it doesn't matter. So they're going to cut the guy; they're going to have to pay him anyways. So we need to be building the system around. I mean, I think I hit on it earlier. The Vikings' win condition is to play solid defense, run the ball, use running the ball to get Kirk in motion and play action passes, and then let him, while he's in motion, tear apart defenses. I don't know why DeFlippo ever thought that throwing 60 yards or 60 times a game out of the shotgun every play was ever going to work with Kirk Cousins, when, I mean, history has showed that it doesn't. So he's kind of got that Alex Smith feel to him, where it's like, well, he's not going to tear you apart single-handedly, but with the team around him, I argue that he's a top 5 quarterback in the league if things are going right. He's not going to carry a game on his shoulders, but if he's got the characters around him, which Minnesota does, he's going to be a hell of a quarterback going into the future, and let's see if he can't go on a tear through the playoffs. So I'm pretty excited about him. Even though it's been 8-6-1, which has been to a lot of people a failure of a season, we're still in playoff contention, and we're still hoping for a Super Bowl. So that's my spiel.
I really couldn't agree more, really, there. I was shocked when we picked him up and we spent 2 picks on offensive linemen, when really I thought they should have invested super heavily, get a lot more assets, in front of Cousins to protect the guy.
Yeah.
And you couldn't have predicted the injuries to Easton and who am I thinking of, the other offensive lineman that was hurt in training camp?
Elfline.
Aviant Collins. Collins is hurt as well. So I think another offseason of loading up on offensive linemen is going to be huge. And speaking of the offensive line, kind of shifting gears to the running game a little bit, Dalvin Cook, horrible in the first half. I mean, it wasn't really his fault. He had no room to run. But the offensive line kind of had a spark, after that Hail Mary, after the touchdown at the end of the first half. What are you guys' thoughts on Cook? And is the Vikings' run game going to be okay going into the playoffs? We'll start with you, Joe J.
Yeah, you'd have to think so. I mean, the line has been playing well these last few weeks. The first half, I don't know.
If they make the playoffs.
Yes. I was surprised by the lack of holes early in the game. Like Joe said, though, I mean, the Dolphins are kind of a fraud of a team with a winning record. Outside of the fact that they led the league in turnovers, they were in the low 20s in every category. And those holes were not sustainable holes. Zimmer even said that. We're not going to see those holes every week.
Ever again.
I have to believe that they're going to continue to do that. I mean, the line looks good. Cook looks great. I mean, I keep saying vintage AP in regards to just, it seems like he can, house a touchdown on every play. He seems I keep saying he seems pent up, which is a really good sign. He's a super dangerous weapon, and I'm just encouraged by the fact that, again, going back to the calm thing, I don't know if recreational marijuana is legal in Michigan yet, but I would replace that with the incense Joe talked about earlier in the game to keep you calm. Sticking with it, with a guy that has that much skill, that has that much skill and just that is that big of a threat. I like, they wore down. They wore down the Dolphins or the Lions rather, or maybe the Lions just, like I said, looked at their jerseys and at halftime and gave up. But I think it'll continue. I think they're going to keep trying. They showed that today, so we'll see. I like Latavius Murray too. I'll put that up.
The running game, I get excited every time there's just a little bit of space for Cook to get through there. Get him to the second level, and he's the kind of guy that has that like Joe said, that Adrian Peterson about him that you think, with the right step or the right move or the right block, he could house it. And it's fun to see that. I love his running style. I don't know what it is about it, but he looks so much more confident, so much more healthy now than he did at the beginning of the season. I mean, we all saw those first couple games. He looked like a guy who was coming off an ACL injury. He was just not as quick, not as aggressive, or putting his foot in the ground. I mean, he was still making the moves, but just right now he looks like he believes in his new knee. He believes his hamstring is healed, and boy, give this guy some room, any room.
That's weird. I was going to ask about that. Probably because they have a ton of activity.
Oh, we're back up. There we go. Back and going.
Good. Let's talk about Barr again. I'm kidding.
No.
Well, speaking of linebackers, Eric Wilson replaced Eric Kendricks and had a pretty solid game. I know Zimmer said he missed a couple tackles here and there, but 6 tackles, 3 tackles for loss, 3 quarterback hits, and a sack.
Big 10.
I'm not sure if pretty big game for him, and I'm not sure if Kendricks' injury is anything to worry about. It's a hamstring, which could linger.
A lot of hammies.
How good is Eric? Yeah, they really, really have been, and but it's nice to have Wilson as a backup. And this defense that Zimmer has built, along with Spielman through the draft, is just they're covered with fantastic backups who can come in at a minute's notice and perform well. So I'm really excited about this defense going forward. And like Joe said, it's really not something that the Vikings have to worry about ever. Is the defense, because they are so good they kind of carry the team.
Well, you look at Anthony Harris as a guy who stepped up too as like a depth guy. When Sendejo went down, and Sendejo, is going to be on a different team next year. I would argue he's the most improved player candidate in the NFL. I mean, he's a ball hawk. He doesn't get 15-yard penalties every other game for head hunting. The depth has been great. I'll be completely honest. I've bemoaned it. I was relatively pissed during the draft last year, like Sean, you alluded to, not picking up more offensive linemen, knowing that Cousins makes mistakes under duress. But it's hard to argue, especially when you have a guy like Mike Hughes go down with the depth. You got a guy like Holton Hill who is a really talented guy. He just had some off the field issues. The Vikings seem to do well in that regard too. I think Everson Griffin fell to the 4th round for similar reasons. But yeah, the defense just as a whole is deep and is back, and I like you said, it's a good recipe for the playoffs, and I guarantee you nobody wants to play the Vikings should they make the playoffs.
Yeah, and I'm not sure if Joe or Mike has anything to add to that.
Go ahead, Mike.
I feel like we're borderline getting back into the Barr conversation, talking about picking up really good backup linebackers.
Yes.
But no, I mean, of course, it's exciting to see. I mean, you want to be in a position where if one of your main guys goes down, you're going to have a guy like Eric Wilson, these second string players, step up and have a great game. And Eric Wilson was flying all over the field today, and it was very exciting to watch. So, luckily, unlike last year, we've actually been pretty healthy injury-wise. I mean, if you looked at the Lions lineup today, I mean, it seems like they're missing everybody. So, luckily, we haven't been forced to use our second-string guys very much. But when you need to, it's really nice to see them step up in a big way and obviously help us with a huge win today. So, you got anything, Joe?
No, no, sorry, I don't.
No, it's all good. Well, that kind of leads me into my next topic I wanted to discuss here. It's nothing major, but I did see Marcus Sherrills got hurt today. Foot injury. He was out kind of early in the game. So it was good to see Zylstra. I thought looked pretty solid with his punt returns. So he made a couple good catches. even while getting hit. So I was impressed by that. CJ Ham as well. I saw he got hurt, elbow injury. He was questionable, I think, around halftime or so, and then did not see him return to the game. So I wanted to get your guys' thoughts there. Any concern with Cheryl's or Ham being out for a period of time?
You make
Cheryl's
a good
is
point.
go for it.
You make a good point in saying that around Zylstra that he caught the ball, and especially and he even took that drill by that penalty that they hit him. But boy, when he did catch the ball and make a move, watching the difference between him and Cheryl's is so marked. It's unbelievable. Cheryl's makes the first guy miss. He's so quick with that first step. I sat there and it just hit me. Oh my God, we need that guy back for the playoffs. And I don't know what it is. I hope it's not an Achilles. They said it was a foot, but they were looking at. He got kind of backed up on his ankle and almost looked like it was in the back of his ankle. So I'm not sure what it is, but I really want to have him back. Zylstra's a good special teams player, but he's not the kind of guy that's going to flip field position for you. I don't think.
Well,
Yeah,
I was going to say on that same topic. Luckily we got the penalty where they ran in or interference to the catch. But I think in that situation, Cheryl's would have probably fair caught it and not risked the chance of muffing it. And he had another similar situation where he luckily caught it. And I think in these big games, if one mistake goes wrong, you're going to miss being the guy who usually makes the right decision. I don't remember the last time I've seen Cheryl's muff a punt. Maybe you guys could fill me in on that. But Cheryl's just excellent decision maker for special teams. And it comes down to those snap decisions. So I was a little nervous to see Zylstra not throw his hand up for a couple fair catches, but luckily, like I think I said in the chat, he didn't muff one. So we'll see what happens going forward.
Zylstra has been like this huge question mark for me all season. They gave up a decent amount for him considering he was unproven in the NFL. Obviously, he was kind of a big deal up in the CFL. That doesn't mean a whole lot though. Because you can't get 20-yard head starts in the NFL when you're a wide receiver. I love Cheryl's. You guys, we haven't really ever done a show together, Mike and Sean. But obviously, I'm a huge Big Ten stan, and I don't find it ironic that almost every player we're highlighting on the show is a Big Ten player, Joe. Wink, wink. But Cheryl's, I always think is. I think Cheryl's is one of the most underrated people on this team. Probably the reason that Prefer keeps his job, despite the fact that he has a new kicker and punter every season, and he just doesn't make mistakes. And beyond that, he's the stats. They talk about this all the time. The color commentators. He's one of the top punt returners in the league. He's probably the best punt returner the Vikings have ever had. He turns nothing into something a lot. He's always a risk to house something. Field position, as we saw early in this game, as Joe alluded to, is so important, and he can flip that field position, as you guys said. He was, the line. You go back to the Dolphins game where Cousins throws the pick six, the momentum shifts, and the really what got the Vikings back on track was that big return by Cheryl's. So, yeah, I'm worried it's an Achilles too, Joe. That would really suck. But he's such a huge part of this team, and he doesn't get a lot of shine for it.
Oh, definitely.
Gotta change the name to this podcast to be about the Big Ten labor.
I would finally. My dad would be happy.
Yeah.
Once the
what a good
Gophers
game, though. What a relief
for an extended period of time.
Yeah. Worried about the
I
Bears?
was super. That kind of brings me to my next point here. Since the Eagles won, kind of just going along with that. Eagles won, so now the Vikings have to win next week. How do you guys feel about the Bears?
Ugh. That's my take.
It's so Vikings to be in this situation, right? We couldn't just win, be happy, take a week off, if you will. But
this is why you have to beat the Bills, why? I will just. This will be my take on it. I do think they very easily could have won the first time. It is at home, that helps. But these last 2 weeks have essentially been playoff games for the Vikings, and just based on historical anguish, I don't see the Vikings winning 3 in a row. When a lot of things are predicated on not making mistakes, and they haven't had those really. They had to pick six a week ago, I should say, but I just have a bad feeling about it. The Bears are legit, and it worries me to no end. But then again, everything does. So I don't know. I just have I have a bad feeling. Is my
It's,
Go ahead, Mike.
it's kind of funny. What was it? 2012, the year AP was 9 yards short of the single season rushing record. The Vikings coming into Week 17. It's a win-in situation going up against the Green Bay Packers, who already clinched the division. And to, I guess, your point where you felt bad about going into this Bears game, I felt great going into that Packers game, and we ended up winning that game. And I feel actually really good coming into this Bears game again. I think we're going to have to start early, but I think the Vikings are going to do that. I think we're going to score 10 points in the first quarter, and I think we're going to ride a good defense and make Mr. Trubisky make mistakes in Minnesota. And I'm pretty excited about it. I mean, I'm not going to say that I know 100% they're going to win, but I am maybe on the opposite side of you, that I'm feeling pretty good about it. I think we can match up well against them if we can get our pass rush going again. And I am not a huge fan of Mr. Trubisky. I think he is prone to many mistakes, and we can punish him for that. So that's my take for next week.
I kind of agree with you, Mike. I was just checking out the stats here because I don't know what the Rams are doing right now, but they're 11-3. The Bears are 10-4. So the Bears have something to play for this week to try to, if they win and the Rams lose, they can get the second seed next week against us. If the Rams win,
Rams are up 24-9 right now, by the way.
Yep.
Yeah. So, but I guess if they're tied, then the Bears have the tiebreaker because they beat them. But it's possible they could be wrestling them. But I think if all things be considered, that Mike, you told us exactly how they have to beat them. The defense is going to be solid for the Rams or for the Bears, and they're going to, the Vikings are not going to score a lot of points, but they'll score at home. But it's a matter of really making this sophomore quarterback uneasy back there and getting after him more so than they did today. And but then you got to contain him too because he can run on the carpet. But anyway, I think that's how I see it. I'm up and down. I'm a little nervous because I'm like Sean said earlier, I've been watching this team for a long time, and you never get entirely comfortable with them. But I think coming in, they're going to have everything on the line. They're going to want to get to the playoffs because there's a check waiting for them if they do. So yeah, I think the Vikings should win the game, but it's going to be a very difficult one in a hard fought battle next week.
I was just say one last comment maybe. As far as thinking about Bears resting players, I think that I honestly don't think they're going to do that in any situation. I mean, maybe unless we end up blowing them out in the first half, but they're going to want to knock the Vikings out of the playoffs next week. I think the Bears would rather see the Eagles than the Vikings in the postseason. I genuinely believe that. And I think they're going to want to have a full head of steam coming in, knocking the Vikings out of the playoffs, then coming in next week and who they play the Eagles, going to knock them out. I think it's to the Bears' advantage to try and be playing killer football every single week as far as they can. So that's just my last little take on it. I don't see the Bears resting their starters in any scenario, but maybe I'll be wrong.
Historically, that never seems to work very well for teams either.
Yeah, typically not. No.
So that was like a trend of years ago.
First week bye, and you don't want to take a player to take 2 weeks off. So
yeah,
never.
Yeah, Joe did. Yeah. Just my last thoughts here. I already have anxiety about the game. I don't really want to talk about it.
Yeah.
But I am excited knowing that we could win and the confidence that will come with that, with winning 3 games in a row heading into the playoffs. This team could be peaking at the right time, like Mike has talked many times about. So I'm pretty excited about that. But was there anything else that you guys wanted to add? Mike, Joe?
Yeah, me and Joe are going to be doing morning Joes tomorrow as opposed to Tuesday, as Tuesday is Christmas.
We are. I didn't know
probably. Yeah. I like to communicate out in the open.
Actually, just keep talking until then, and just change the name at some
marathon. Merry Christmas, you guys.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Merry Christmas.
And you.
Merry Christmas to everybody. You know.
And Mike, welcome to the team. You are amazing. I am super glad that you joined us. And Joe and Sean, you guys are my MVPs, and I appreciate everything that you do. So thank you, and have an awesome Christmas. If I don't talk to you, me and Joe talk every 20 minutes, so we'll be fine. But Sean and
About
Mike,
the Big Ten. We talk about
always
the Big Ten everything.
always.
Gotta mix it up a little bit. All right, well, I'm glad Vikings pulled it off today, 27-9 over the Lions. Nick Olson and I may be doing a show later on tonight or sometime this week, so look out for that as well. But it was great joining you guys. We will talk to you guys next week. Skol.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Skull.
Skol. Later, guys.